everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. Yes, I'm Motor City Madmouth. Great crew lined up today. I have a special guest who's a special friend and a colleague. His name is Larry Bluestein. Welcome to the big show, Larry.
Thanks a lot, Scott. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
All right, well, we'll introduce the rest of the crew real quickly. George Eichhorn.
Good to be on again, the Sports Exchange. Another great night to talk sports.
The Sports Exchange is a show George and I created way back in the 80s. So we're keeping the tradition going. JBLS, welcome to the big show.
How's it going, guys? Glad to be here. Another great week.
You bet. And last but not least, Candy Ebling.
Awesome. Glad to be here talking sports with you fine gentlemen.
All right, give everybody an overview on this. I'll give everybody an overview of this show. We're going to talk about camward, Miami Hurricanes, and we're also going to have a little video on mariocristobal after what the Hurricanes have done the first few games of the year as the Hurricanes head up to South Florida over the weekend, which I will be up there along with Candy taking pictures. It'll be interesting. We'll also have Pac-12 adding 4 teams. And then we're going to talk about Larry a little bit about his passion for baseball, his recruiting services, and the Florida Panthers winning the Stanley Cup. And if he wants to, he can make predictions on the World Series. And the crew is going to have an opportunity to ask anything that they want of you. How's that sound, Larry? All righty. So with that said, Cam Ward is the first Miami quarterback to begin the season with 3 consecutive 300-yard performances. What makes that number so impressive is he's playing at quarterback U, and some of the names that have come out there: Jimkelly, berniekosar, ginotorretta, vinnietestaverde, excuse me, and he hasn't even finished the game yet, considering that they're all blowouts. The first one was 41-17 to Florida. Florida A&M got hammered 56-9, and Ball State got beat 62-0. And Larry and I and Candy experienced a 2.5-hour lightning delay. How about that? Okay. So with that said, let's talk about that, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about the Canes. Okay, so Larry, what are your thoughts about Cam Ward from what you've seen so far?
Yeah, well, not a lot night to like. He's just an outstanding quarterback, extends plays, finds a lot of receivers. I think in the last game he hit 8 different targets, and he's a winner. Just had an opportunity to come here and then play in a situation where Miami's offensive line, probably they spent more on their offensive line than the Cowboys did, but it's been paying off for him so far. Not a lot not to say about him. He's just a really good quarterback. He's going to be a 1-year deal. He's elevating the kids under him, like the kid Emory Williams, who probably will be his heir apparent, although they could go into the portal again. And the one thing that makes him really special is that, he sees the field, and, if he has to, he could extend the plays with his legs.
That's okay. So, yeah, you're right. He does see the field, and it makes it look pretty easy the way he goes ahead and goes about his business out there. You know what? At the Florida game, I saw him go ahead, roll right it was, and found another receiver. So this guy definitely has a big command of the field without a doubt, Larry. So when we talk about, Cam Ward, here's a guy that came from Washington State. He replaced tylervandyke, who unfortunately suffered a leg injury, and he's out for the year. What an unfortunate break for the Canes quarterback. But we know that Emory Williams, we saw what he did on Saturday against Ball State, looking good, 11 of 12. And I like what I saw of Emory Williams as well. I mean, so you're right. He's going to impact that quarterback room in a lot of ways. So let me ask you this, Larry. When you heard about the tylervandyke injury, what was the first thing that went to your mind?
Well, I felt sorry, obviously. I felt sorry for Candy more than anything else, or Wisconsin Badgers kind of took it on the chin. But, he's worked so hard. He wanted to, get a fresh start, up in Wisconsin. And I know that as soon as he got there during the spring, he played. They like what they saw. He's got that mentality. He's a 23-year-old kid that could really, and I still think he will be, he'll be on the sidelines. He'll be in the meeting rooms. He'll, get into the quarterback a little bit and, use his leadership. And I think it's going to be really, really good for him. It's, not to say they would have beaten Alabama, but he had them rolling on that one drive where he got hurt. It was kind of a freak play where he went out of bounds and someone rolled on top of him and his leg got caught. And, it's football and obviously it's going to happen. But, it's tough because I know how hard he worked in the off season and, to get better. And, you just another thing on Cam Ward, you got to remember he started out at an NAIA school, Incarnate Word. That's where he started out before he went to Washington State. And, he's from Texas and, he's one of those guys that came out of high school and not a lot of people recruited him. He's athletic quarterback, but never showed, what he's showing now. He went into the right offense at Washington State where it's kind of a wide open offense. And then when they were a team like Oregon State without a place to go, he figured, you know what, I'll go to a conference. I know he narrowed it down to Florida State and Miami. And Miami kind of, got him. And during the spring, you could tell he was really going to be special. I went to like 3 scrimmages. I went to their spring game. I think he threw for 450 yards in the spring game. And, he's just been one of those soothing guys. And a lot like Tyler Van Dyke is he's going to serve as a role model. He's going to serve as a leader for a lot of the younger kids that Miami has. And it's not, it's not real easy when you have a lot of transfers like they do, but everybody has them, and watching games the last couple of weeks on TV, every time a kid made a play, they'd say, well, he was at Kansas State last year, or he was at Wisconsin last year. So Miami started this portal, if you remember, back during Manny Diaz's day. They started actually the NIL with De'Aaron King as a quarterback. His first NIL deal was to be at a lounge, like a restaurant lounge where he would greet people, and he got $1,000 for it. But if you only knew what is happening now, you look at Shedeur Sanders, who's making $5.4 million, and some of the guys. And you know what? Before we were talking about the Bears, and the whole thing is you look at Caleb Williams, and this is where this NIL goes, off the rails. Caleb Williams had a way in, JB, before he left USC because he was going to make more money than his rookie contract with the Bears. So that's where, and remember, he was on Wendy's commercials, Dr. Pepper commercials, Nissan, and making tons of money. And to me, I never begrudged any of these kids from getting money but I always thought it was going to be just money, like, so they can go out to dinner, maybe have a date and go out here and there. I didn't know they're going to be able to buy 5 houses with it. I mean,
right.
Kind of went off the rails, I think.
No kidding. That's the truth. All right, JB, what's your take on everything that Larry's mentioned so far?
No, I mean, talking about the quarterback, done an outstanding job. Pretty impressive that he's the first one ever to do that. When you look at the lineage of the quarterbacks in Miami, it says a lot, but also a lot of it's because the game has changed. Passing, today, 300 yards passing, is like 200 yards passing 20 years ago. So I can't really look at just that stat and say, well, that's amazing, because, Vinny wasn't throwing the ball the way we are today. So it's hard to correlate those stats, but it's still impressive to think that he's the first one ever to do that, because they've had such a rich history down there. And as far as the NIL money, yeah, it's ridiculous how much these guys get now. Good for them, because for years the student athlete was taken advantage of, and the schools made tons of money. But, good for them now that they're getting some of it back. It's just a shame that it's not going to the guys who played before.
Okay, George, what's your take on it? Let's go to the chat room real quick. Joshua Dorr making a lot of noise in there, good noise, okay. Bluestein, yeah, that's him, okay. I've known him, Joshua, just, over 40 years, okay. Let's see, the one and only, yeah, he's definitely the one and only. Okay, Justin Fields will win the Super Bowl with the Steelers. Well, we'll see. Keep it going, Candy, and now you can read them too, Candy.
What's going on, George?
Hey, Joshua Dorr.
Starving.
Hey, listen, I agree with everything that's been said. Oh, thank you for George and his comments. But this Cam Ward is having a hell of a season, no question about it. You look at his yards total: 1,035 yards, 11 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's at 209 his rating already this year in 3 games. So he is well on his pace to dominating college football as far as the quarterback goes this year. I like him for all the reasons that you mentioned, Larry. I like his size. I like his ability. I like his accuracy. The kid's got a good head on his shoulders. And, it's just, you got to be participating. You got to be participating in the portal, and I give Miami credit because Cam Ward is doing a hell of a job right now. And like you said, you got Emory Williams in the wings too. So they've got a good situation going for them. And I do echo your comments too about, of course, like JB, you're right. I mean, they're making way too much money, in the portal. I mean, on the IL, and there's too much going around, but the NCAA just can't do anything about it right now. They can't come to grips with it right now. But getting back to football on the field, I'm very high on Miami. Cam Ward stays healthy. Look out, man. The Hurricanes are for real.
That's true. All right, back to the chat room. Joshua Door's asking about where your piano is. My goodness. Well, it's not in action tonight.
Yeah.
That's another conversation. Blows, what's going on? This show's going on. George Buboris. He's acting through PlayStation 2. Cheat codes, all right. 2 Georges here tonight. Okay, Larry, do you know Ed Bluestein? Does that ring a bell?
No, but I know I've driven on the highway out in Austin, Texas. That's it. They have the Ed Bluestein Highway. Never heard. I don't know who he is. He's some Texan. I know that.
Well, there you go. Okay. So, all right, Candy. Well, all right. So you all finished with Cam Ward, George, or anything else you want to add to it?
No, I'm all set. Thank you.
All right, Candy's been taking pictures of Cam Ward. So you get to see him closer than anybody, and I get to talk to him. Candy, what are your thoughts about Cam Ward?
I'm going to say this, and it's probably a kind of a bold statement, but Cam Ward is a generational type quarterback. He sees the field. He reads the field. He knows his receivers and their strengths and kind of like what they're on the same page. They've practiced well enough. And he's a very good, talented player. Whoever drafts him is going to be lucky, I think. And I think that they will be fighting for him because I don't know that, and I know you're going to go into some of this topic, but I don't know that there's a quarterback that I've seen around the colleges that is of the same caliber as he is. And
he's different, no doubt.
He is.
But his style's different than like Clint Ewers or guys like Carson Beck, who are both going to be, definitely, the guys to take. But he actually adds a different dimension, Candy, and that's the one thing. But you know what? They fit the kind of the offense, that helps him. And as you mentioned, they run the ball well. They have a big offensive line. And you got guys that catch the ball. Restrepo is another kid. He's 37 catches away from being the all-time leading receiver in Miami history. And then when you take a look at all the guys they've had from Andre Johnson and Michael Irvin, that's pretty impressive for a guy that when he got there, everybody thought he was a 1AA type of player. And I think he's kind of proven them wrong. But getting back to what you said, Candy, you're 100% right. He could be a generational player. And I think that, as George said, if Miami, kind of holds it together, because right now they've gone through their easier part. USF this week gets a little bit harder. Then they come back for Virginia Tech. And then the 2 games after that are the games that are going to test them. They're at California, which is really, kind of crazy, but and then they're at Louisville. And those are 2 programs that could easily jump on them a little bit. And, I said before the year, I thought they'd be 9-3. I thought they'd lose to Florida, but you never know. You never know in a game like that, because I've been to Florida Field, and that's like one of the top 5 places in the country to play when they're winning. But I agree with you, and as far as that's concerned, and as Scott says, Scott gets an opportunity to ask a lot of these players some questions at the end of the game. I just sit there and listen, but because I yield to a lot of guys like Scott and some of the guys that have to write stories on that day, and but that 2.5 hour lightning delay the other day was a little bit crazy, because we had a high school game the night before where we had a 2-hour lightning delay. Wow. And we didn't get started till 9:20 and got out of there 1:45. And I've never been to a high school game that we got out of there so late with.
Well, it's funny. I got to mention about Blows. He said, that's why I asked, my new office is on that road in Austin, meaning at Bluestein. And Blows says, I am a rocket scientist. Just ask Scott. Yeah, you are. All right. That's for sure. Now, D-Lowe's, I guess he says there's a camward that's a hockey goaltender. All right. But we're talking college football. D-Lowe's says he plays football now. And, good to know, Joshua. All right. And we'll continue on. Yeah, I do get a chance to ask a lot of questions. And on Saturday, I had the opportunity to talk to Coach Cristobal. Candy's going to play it in a moment, about the easier schedule. Obviously, Florida, you didn't know what you're going to expect. I thought it could go either way with Florida, but then once Miami took control, the Gators weren't looking back. It was 41-17. Of course, Florida A&M 56-9, and Ball State 62-0. And Daniel Richardson's a quarterback for Florida A&M, formerly of FAU, that Cristobal had a lot of praise for. But let's go to the video here about what I asked Cristobal about the early part of the schedule. So, folks, take a listen. Mario, what did you take away from these last 2 games, lopsided defeats against them, obviously? Were you able to use a lot of players and get a lot of player evaluation as you step up in class against USF?
Well, we did. We cleaned up a lot of our stuff, too. I mean, the use of technology, right? The headsets, all that stuff, our systems, figuring out who can do what well, right? And then also putting some guys in situations to play and see if they could perform at a level where we can win with them. So I think a lot of progress in those areas. The one area that was disappointing was the penalties. We certainly on special teams were trying hard to become a better special teams unit, and we had some bright spots early on the kickoff, and then later we got tangled up on some of the return game stuff that is, it's not us. We got to do a better job. But all in all, just proud of the team handling the delay. They did a good job with that. Proud of them making a decision to just get better today, and see families get in bed and get ready for a big game next week.
Oh, there you go. So this is what Coach Cristobal had to say about those first couple of games. Mind you, I thought the Florida A&M game was going to be a little bit closer because, Larry, as we both know, the last time Florida A&M had lost was to, ironically, the University of South Florida. But meanwhile, they were playing at the HBCU level and winning a lot of games. So as I went to that Monday conference, and then, of course, we talked about it then, it's safe to say he has a boatload of respect for Florida A&M. So, Mario Cristobal is a great coach. He really is. I think he's going to do some great things with the program. And those people that got on his back the first 2 years, give me a break. It takes at least 3 years to put your stamp on a program. So Mario Cristobal knows how to recruit this area. He played for the University of Miami as an alumni guy and won a couple of championships as well. So with that said, that's what you have right there. I'm looking forward to seeing. Now, for me, this week is going to be interesting, okay? My alma mater is the University of South Florida, and I have a vested interest in the Miami Hurricanes. People have asked me lately, who you root for? I said, there's no way I'm going to lose. And that's the only way that I could get out of it. But I do have vested interest in the games. Anybody else want to add to what I talked about with Cristobal, or do we move on? Okay. All right. One more topic I want to get to. Then we're going to get to know Larry a little bit. The Pac-12 is adding 4 Mountain West teams: Boise State, San Diego State, Fresno State, Colorado State. Larry, what are your thoughts about the additions to the Pac-12?
Well, yeah, those are great teams. I think they'll keep adding to it. My alma mater is UNLV, so I would like to see them get into it, eventually too. since they're upgrading everything.
Right.
But I like it. I like the fact that they're kind of reviving the conference. I grew up as a big Pac-8 fan back in the days, before Arizona and Arizona State and Utah and everybody was added. So yeah, I like the move. I think it's really good for football. It's and eventually maybe Cal and Stanford will go back there, because them being in the ACC makes zero sense to me.
Well, you know what, Larry? Here's what I predicted. Okay, number one, not only should UNLV be in there, I think Nevada should be in there. That way, they could go ahead and corner the whole state of Nevada and keep it close to a regional situation that makes a lot of sense. I'm with you with UNLV by all means, but take Nevada too. You might as well, and that way you pretty much locked in Nevada. What also makes it interesting is you got San Diego State, so in retrospect, they have Southern California. Fresno State, you're going Northern California, and Boise State's been a good program for a while. And Colorado State, you're pretty much getting into the Denver market, even though you don't have Colorado. So I think they're off to a good start with the 6th, but I think both Nevada schools should be added, and who knows, maybe New Mexico works their way into it. But I forget about New Mexico for now. I think both Nevada schools should go in, and you have the requirement of 8 to achieve FBS status. All right, JBLS, what are your thoughts?
I mean, you could call anything. We could be, called the Pac-12. Well, it's not the same. Great move bringing in these teams. They had to do something for the 2 teams that were left, Washington State. They had to create their own conference, and smart move keeping the name. For it's worth something, so you might as well take advantage of what it's worth. I do agree with you. You got to bring in UNLV, and Nevada's not a bad idea. I would think Hawaii possibly would be another good team to bring in. Maybe Air Force, but they're going to have to do something creative to make people want to watch and be taken into that conference, because in all honesty, now you got the Big Ten and the SEC. Everybody else is just there. Even the ACC is fallen by the wayside with football, unfortunately, because Florida State just came out of the box looking horrible, and they were undefeated last year. So not saying that there's no other good ACC schools, but when your argument was your team that went undefeated last year, now this year is completely horrible, makes it hard to sell the conference there. But I'm glad to see that they're doing something. I hope that they are able to get some other good schools in there, and just try and build it back, and maybe try and break up these super conferences. It's really no fun.
Well, Joe, if you go 10, I don't think there's any question you put Hawaii in there, and then you do put Air Force, and if Air Force doesn't go, then you add New Mexico, so you still have that part of the country. So everything you're saying is pretty much online. All right, George, what are your thoughts?
Well, I have to agree. I think their future, the Pac-12's future, is going to rely on, like you said, more regional, more close to home kind of schooling, okay? And teams in the conference, I agree with you both. Nevada has to be part of it, UNLV, Air Force, I got to hand it to you, JB. I didn't think about that one, but that would be a nice addition. But yeah, get back to your roots. Your roots were out west. Your roots were the West Coast. You've suffered some pains, big pains, Pac-12, but you got a chance. You've got to get some more teams in that conference, because I don't mind having extra teams in there less than 12, but it's kind of silly and sad this year with 2 teams. And a lot of good stuff is done behind the scenes that we don't even know about. There could be other teams they're talking about here at the Pac-12, at the commissioner's office, but I'm telling you right now, I like the ideas that have been thrown out by yous, and really get back, like I said, to the basics. That geographic area, the Rocky Mountain and the Pacific time zones, that's where you're going to get your teams and your enthusiasm back towards the Pac-12 conference.
Well, I give Oregon State and Washington State a whole lot of credit for hanging in there and keeping it. Now you're adding 4, and then you're going to add 2. And if you add 2 more, it won't hurt either. All right, I'll never hear the end of this from Blows, so I got to go ahead and ask you this, Larry. what are those things on the wall behind you? He's asking, are they beers? Come
Beer
on,
cans.
serious? They're beer cans. Look at this, Blows. You got some pretty darn good eyes, man. But they're empty, so don't think you're going over.
Yeah, I have a beer can collection that I started in 1974, 5, and then yeah, I've got a lot of different things. This is really my sports room, but I have like posters and a lot of different things around the whole room. But yeah, that's all those are beer cans. It's everybody. Every time I go on to a podcast or so, everybody wants to know. Like over my shoulder there, if I duck away, you're going to see straight ahead. You're going to see the opening day Miami, Florida Marlins poster and the opening day Florida Panthers poster. There, you can see them.
So there you go, Blows. I got to give you credit. This one time where he's getting way better at this chat thing, but you know what? His eyes are way younger than mine. He can notice those beer cans. Go ahead, pat yourself on the back, Blows, for that one. Good stuff. We'll get to the Panthers in a moment. Don't get too crazy, okay? So with that said, Blows is good. I like the guy. Him and Joshua Dore to me are two interesting characters, and Dylan's pretty good too. All these guys they mean well, is what they really do. But when we talk about the technology of what these interviews are really all about, I mean, that's what we've come, and that's why we're able to incorporate different new wrinkles to try to make these shows better. And I appreciate the fact that Larry and I are always in the press conference, because you know what? I can't think of a better guy to have alongside of me, because he knows the way I operate anyways for all of these years, especially when I was a youngin'. But yeah, now George Burbis, powerful speech by you, Eichhorn. Yes, a couple Georges in the room. So yeah, Blows is applauding you.
All right, thank you.
Oh, hell yeah. That's awesome. There you go. All right. So with that said, anybody haven't commented on this? Candy, I don't think you have yet, have you?
No, I haven't.
I think it's Candy's turn.
No kidding. Seriously?
So I would say college football, they redid the playoffs. They have to redo some of these conferences, because I think some of them are getting way too big. Like, let's look at the Big Ten. It's no longer the Big Ten. It's how many? 18? And then you have a conference at 6. And you have the other thing is with NIL, you have all kinds of money going around. If you caught Inside the Pigskin last night, I was talking about how Tennessee now is upping their tax on their season ticket holders by, I believe it's 10% for that money to go towards NIL money and to pay for some of this. The expense that the teams are going to have now, if they're flying all the time from one side of the country to the other side of the country, is kind of crazy if you think about it. And it's not just football. I mean, think about it. Like, USC is now in the Big Ten, so Rutgers has to go, and play them. And it's going to make for a very interesting and expensive, I think, time these days. So am I happy that it's more than just 2 now? Yes. I can see all of the people all the different teams you guys have commented on, though, Hawaii and UNLV and all of them. So Scott, back to you.
Well, with that said, we're going to get to know Larry a little bit more. But Candy, why don't you go to a station break really quickly, okay? And then we'll get to know Larry Bluestein and our background together and what he's done with the Miami Marlins, but the minor league version. So go ahead real quickly.
South Florida Tribune published a book last November. It is written by none other than your host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth. And the foreword is written by George Eichhorn. The title is Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Apple, and Google Books. There is also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where you can also, there is a link to our merchandise store where you can get hats, sweatshirts, shorts, sweats, you name it. Go to our sports apparel website. The website also has the writings of Scott. It has JB and George, and it has pictures that I've taken from some of the different events that we've gone to. So go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. If you want to sponsor or advertise on one of our shows, you can call Scott 954-304-4941. If you enjoy podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Monday nights we talk on Fire Up Florida, we talk hockey. Then we talk baseball. Tuesday nights we talk football. Wednesday nights Sports Exchange. You never know what we're going to be talking about. And Thursday nights is Fire Up, where I host that. And you never know what we're going to talk about on there as well. Okay, back to you, Scott.
Very good. All right, now we're going to get to know Larry Bluestein a little bit more. Okay, Larry obviously has a passion for baseball dating back to his Florida State League days when I got to know you anyways. And you know, with the Miami Marlins. The Miami Marlins played in the Florida State League. And of course, sonnyhirsch was involved. Sonnyhirsch was one of the greatest people I've ever met. You know, I can remember Larry and I and Sonny over at Fort Lauderdale Stadium with these long rain delays, and they ran out of food and all that. And I'm telling you, people don't underestimate what rain delays are in South Florida. Why you need a roof. But that was just an unbelievable time. And of course, Larry and Sonny have also been longtime Miami Hurricanes people. So, you know, Larry, what was it like for you and Sonny, and of course myself back in those days, to be able to talk about the original Miami Marlins, which so few people really know that you had to keep professional baseball in Miami just to be even considered for a team down the road?
Well, I'll just start where I began with the Marlins. In 1962, my parents, right after the AAA days that they had with Satchel Paige and everybody in the 50s, they went in 1962. They became a Class D team with the Philadelphia Phillies, and on that 62-63 team were some pretty decent names: fergusonjenkins, Pat Williams, who was a catcher, former Orlando Magic GM who just recently passed, Alex Johnson, Jeff James, all these guys who were the early Phillies type of guys. And my mom and dad, they took us and my mom on Sundays when they had 2:00 games would invite some of the players back to the house. I mean, we were kind of young at the time, but I remember Ferguson-Jenkins sitting in our living room eating chicken with, my mom made. And, we didn't have cell phones back in that day, so you couldn't really take pictures other than like the Polaroids or whatever they had. But through the years, I kind of like Miami Baseball Stadium. I kind of grew up in that area and followed the team when they were with the Phillies organization, and then they became the Orioles organization where Cal Ripken Sr. was the manager back in 1966, and kind of followed them. In 66, 67, 68, we were bat boys for the spring training Orioles and also for the Miami Marlins, and got a chance to meet, guys like Paul Blair and Merv Rettenmund and, some of the great Oriole people of that era. And then it followed suit into the 70s. And when I got back from college, I worked with Sonny Hirsch put me on the air. I mean, he took a chance with me and put me on the air at 15 years old on WKAT radio. So, and I would do a talk show on the weekends. And it's been, but I've always been baseball oriented. I've done football for a long, long time, but baseball is where my heart is. And like I said, we had an opportunity back in the early 70s when Eddie Murray came up. Eddie Murray was actually in Bluefield, which is a rookie league team after he got drafted. He learned how to switch hit. George Farson, who was the manager at the time, and then he followed George up to the Miami Orioles back in 74. And they had John Flynn on that team, used to pitch, for the Orioles as well. So I'm telling you, I just grew up in that era where, I was there. And then when I started working for the Orioles, the Miami Orioles in 79 and 80 and 81, and that's where I met Scott back in that time. And I was a traveling secretary. I made reservations. I go on the road. So I really got a baptism on the baseball, and the best part was spring training. And, I had the pleasure of announcing the PA announcing for 5 years with the Orioles during the spring training, and get an opportunity to see Pete Rose and Tom Seaver and people like that. And it's just been great. And I started in football, actually 1970, working for the Miami News and just kind of being a stringer. And
Right.
but that's what I do. I've also been fortunate to be in radio now for coming up on 50 years or 52 years. I still host a show every Monday night here in Miami on WQAM, which is kind of the flagship station for the Miami Heat and the Panthers and the Hurricanes, and do a podcast every Monday night called Six Ring Canes with the University of Miami. I do a lot of draft stories for minor leagues. I've been to a lot of the area code games. I go to when Under Armour had their game in Chicago. We were just talking, JB. I was there for the Under Armour game that they had that year. And I just been keeping in touch with everything. And also I have a passion for high school and collegiate wrestling. I've announced a state wrestling tournament for 39 years here in Florida, and have had the pleasure of seeing guys like Ray Lewis when he wrestled for Lakeland Kathleen. And so, I've kind of touched a lot of the different things. I also worked for a newspaper down here called the Hollywood Sun-Tatler at one point. They are now, obviously, they're defunct, but I had a chance to cover the Fort Lauderdale Strikers back in the day when they had Gerd Mueller and Gordon Banks. And, and I worked for the Kick magazine, and I got a chance to do stories on George Best and Johan Cruyff, who came over and played for the Los Angeles team from Ajax in Holland, and that was special because my mom was born in the same city as Bert Blyleven in Holland, and my mom came over here and she became the biggest Brooklyn Dodger fan in history, and for somebody who grew up in outside of Amsterdam, she really adapted to it. And my dad's been everything. My dad was everything to me as far as taking me everywhere and exposing me to these, games. I would have never been able to do any of this. And even back in high school, my buddy and I used to skip school and go to the spring training games. And we kind of got caught one day. One of the local TV stations was doing an interview with Rico Petrosali, and we got in the background. And the next day when we came in, our typing teacher said, "Hey, did you enjoy the game?" And so that, you do kid things. And when we were younger, also we would, now you can't get next to the NFL teams when they're here or the college teams, but back in the day, they would stay at these hotels, and we got an opportunity to be in the same lobby as Bear Bryant for like an hour and just talking to him just like a regular guy. Had an opportunity to see the Buffalo Bills when they came in and actually saw Haven Moses and Al Cowlings and O.J. Simpson. Actually sat on Terry Bradshaw's bed when he was a rookie with the Steelers. He and Roy Girello were kind of roommates. So, yeah, I've had I think growing up, and these kids don't understand nowadays what kind of kind of upbringing we had. And it's I would have never traded what I went through growing up. Obviously, we didn't have, like you, JB, you had an opportunity to have major leagues, and we never did, other than, spring training. We got the Dolphins in '66. I never really was a Dolphin fan because I became a Ram fan before, but I kind of, pulled for the teams. And we never had hockey. We had ABA basketball with the Miami Floridians back in the day. So, yeah, that's it. I've had a great opportunity to be well-rounded in what I do. And, I don't pigeonhole myself, even though a lot of people kind of relate me to, to recruiting and stuff, because I've done that I did that nationally for 19 years and had an opportunity to be everywhere. And then just for the last 24 years, I've been in the state of Florida, and fortunate to visit 11 to 12 colleges during the summer and going to camps and combines, and get a chance to now with the advent of 7-on-7. So I keep busy. I'm in upper 60s, but other than when I get up in the morning, I don't feel it.
Well, let me say this, okay? Number one, down by the Marlins Park, they have Sonnyhirsch Way. So I'm glad that they honored Sonny, not only for what he did with the Marlins. What's that?
I raised money for that.
Did you? Well,
yeah,
good.
I raised $6,000 to get that. And it was the whole street. But then when they built a new facility, they only cut it down to that one sign right along in front of the stadium. But yeah, I just felt that I owed it to them. And I went, I had to sit before more commissions to get that damn thing passed. And and we had to pay a lot of money for it. But, guys like Dennis Erickson and people like that kind of anteed up because of the fact that what Sonny meant to the Hurricane program as well.
Well, I'm proud to drive on it with sonnyhirsch. And of course, I got to know him really well. I was working at the Hallandaledigest at the time, a place that you would subsequently work at, for arguably one of the greatest employers on the planet, in Peterbluesten. He's a guy that I think the world of. And, when you talk about covering the Fort Lauderdale Strikers, when I was here back in the 80s, I covered the Fort Lauderdale Strikers too. So it was kind of neat. I remember Kick Magazine. I remember Ken Rothberg was one of the best photographers on the planet. So, but here's something you probably didn't do that I did. A guy by the name of Doug Pett. Obviously, you remember him.
Yeah, announcer for the Yankees.
Yeah, right. He got me a spring training job, Joe. Get this, as a scoreboard operator for the Texas Rangers when they were at Pompano Beach Municipal Stadium. Wow. So that I could pick up some extra money. And let me tell you, when you're in college, you're broke, man. All you live off of are Steak and Shake and a lot of the fast food places. Of course, I was skinny then. It didn't even matter, but still.
That's great.
So, yeah, no, I mean, like I said, working with Peter, one of the nicest guys in the world, he made us feel like family. And, Brother Danny was all right too, but Peter to me was a father figure that I think that anybody can go ahead and relate to. Larry and I have talked fondly about Peter for a long time and all that. So with that said, and I want to make sure everybody has a fair opportunity to go ahead and ask questions. Larry, you just pretty much talked about it a little bit. Explain to everybody what Larry's recruiting services are, which are obviously Prep Red Zone Florida. You've been doing it a long time anyways. You talk about the top high school prospect, but give everybody an idea and a detail of what you do and how much help you are to all these universities.
Well, what we do with our larrybluestein.com, it's a Miami-Dade and Broward thing. It's, obviously that the 305 and 954 nationally have put out as much talent as anybody else. And, you could go to a game like we went to last week, Miami Northwestern, who Teddy Bridgewater is now the head coach, and, against Miami Norland. And you could have as many as 14 what they call now Power 4. It's not Power 5 anymore. Maybe JB, they might go back to Power 5 if that Pac-12 ever catches on. But you could have that much talent in one place. So we cover that. We do rankings. We do prospect reports. We do class stuff, and it's a free website. And a lot of the colleges that we see that have an opportunity to come into town. James Franklin from Penn State was there last Friday night. I had an opportunity to see him and talk to him for a while. One of his kids that committed was in that game. I mean, you'll see, you see a lot. That's the one thing that's great. Like this weekend, Miami goes to USF, and I was telling Scott, Coach Golesh, who came from Tennessee, is one of the best young head coaches coming up. I think USF will most likely be in the ACC for the 2026 season, which only makes sense since Tampa's the largest TV market in the state of Florida. So get a chance to see them, walk around with guys like Mike Norvell, at FSU. And I've covered Mariocristobal and his brother since they were in high school at Christopher Columbus High School. So I have kind of a bond with Mario from way back in the days when he actually was in youth football. So that's the one thing too, guys, that I'm very fortunate that a lot of the head coaches now that are around the country, no matter where they are, they were all position coaches at one time and all recruited Florida. So I would, Brett Bielma at Illinois, and, on and on, so I've been very fortunate in that way. So, and let me tell you, the Prep Red Zone Florida we do the entire state, and it's, myself and two others, we head it up, and it's just great. We do rankings 6 times a year, so they change, so they're not stale. And we have over 300 college coaches that subscribe to it. So yeah, so that's it. That's what we do for the recruiting end of things. So I'm excited. Like I said, we're midway through the season now, and it just gets better and better as long as the lightning stays away.
I got to know Alex Golish during the Boca Raton Bowl when they went out there and trounced Syracuse 45-0. This guy reminds me a lot of Dan Campbell with his enthusiasm. He really does. And I think he's done an outstanding job at USF, and I wish him well personally. So you know what? I'm done, but JB Ellis is. And you can ask Larry anything you want, okay? You don't have to be relegated to recruiting. I'm sure you probably have a few questions you'd like to ask Larry, right, JB?
So out of all the different hats you've worn, because you were into recruiting, you did the radio show, or you still do the radio show, you worked for a team, which did you find the most enjoyment with, and what would you want to do if you could do any of them right now?
JB, if I could stayed in baseball longer, just the opportunity to be part of, we got a chance to go like to some of the spring training sites in Arizona. And I just, whenever I go out to baseball games now, like I said, I don't get to a lot of Marlin games. I used to just go when the Mets were in town. But to answer your question, I think if I could have stayed in baseball solely, I would have done that. It's just from a financial standpoint, it really didn't, it didn't make sense at the time. But baseball is my first love.
So with the recruiting site, Prep Red Zone, how did you guys start that? And how did it grow and develop to what it is now throughout the whole state?
Well, Prep Red Zone is out of Minnesota. They started as a basketball only deal. They had sites in, I think, 18 to 20 states for basketball. It was a good exposure, for a lot of the basketball, not so much the large basketball schools, but a lot of those, in the Midwest, they have a ton of Division II, Division III, NAIA. And then they started into football. And since I had done, Florida for so many years, I was approached to do it. And at first I was a little hesitant because, the fact that I kind of started wanting to, and this was like about 5 years ago, I kind of wanted to wind things down. But then I got involved and they said, you could add a couple of people if you want of your own. And I did. And I knew a lot of what I did is I got 2 people who had their kids got recruited and they knew the recruitment. And, so I hired them and we've been going strong. We started out, now they're in 39, 40 states. And when you buy one package for each state, you get the entire, entire deal. And like I said, every single day we have something, whether it's like I came out today with, 55 of the top 2027 kids. Those are current sophomores. And, so people and college coaches love that because of the fact that they get a chance to see those guys. We come out with a thing called prospect video, and we run almost 100 with their video, with their GPAs. So we give, if you're paying $9.95 a month, you get that and then some. So we, 3 people doing a lot of work, put out close to 17 to 20 things every week. I even do stuff on weekends. We have rankings every Tuesday. We have a complete scoreboard of the entire state every Saturday morning, which a lot of people don't get. And so to answer your question, baseball is my love. Football is something, that has become a real decent passion for almost 6 decades.
Anything else you want to add?
Yeah.
Go
So
ahead, Joe.
you've met a lot of famous athletes and coaches and worked with them and been around them. Taking away the work part of it, who was your favorite person that you met and why?
Yeah, well, there's 2. Earl Weaver. And a lot of people kind of didn't get along with him and took him wrong. But you know what? He took the time a lot of times to just, we go out in the bullpen and sit out there and he'd just talk to me and, just a real, that's why I used to, and I love when he got in those fights with the umpires because that's how he was. But him and a guy that probably a lot of people listening don't remember, but his name is Toby Hara. And Toby played obviously with the Indians, with the Texas Rangers. And Toby he came on, I did a show at WIOD down here. the station would cover the NL East, and back then it was Baltimore, Detroit, the Orioles, and the Red Sox. And they would have a game on from like 7:30 till 10, and I would do a show from 10 to midnight, and I had him on the show. And the next day when I said, thank you he never forgot my name. And I thought that was pretty neat. I mean, here I was like 20 years old, and somebody like that is. So those two guys, I was deeply disappointed in a guy that I loved because I was a Met fan, in Tom Seaver. He turned out not to be the greatest guy in the world from that standpoint. One of the best pitchers ever. Still remember when he got, drafted out of USC and he played in Jacksonville. And so to be honest with you, Earl Weaver was great, at least to me, and also Toby Harrah.
Very cool.
Anything else, Joe?
No, that's it.
All right, George.
Well, Larry, much has always been said about high school football players, and as some have said, basketball players, that they prefer to be in these warm states, Florida, Texas, Georgia, California. Right. But yet we have a lot of great athletes in the Midwest, too. Don't count us short. In Michigan, Ohio, Illinois. Is there disparity there, Larry? Do you still see it as far as the the high school kids and coming out? And I know the recruiting obviously is nationwide now for these football coaches. But what are your thoughts about that the Midwest was kind of like just a little bit inferior to the warm weather states?
Yeah, that's, that couldn't be any further than the truth. And like I said, I've covered national for a lot of years, and I've had an opportunity to see, Canton McKinley and Massillon and, programs in Ohio. Also, excuse me, got a chance to go to Minnesota and watch Steve Walsh at Creighton Durham, the same school that Chris Wenke came out of and Joe Mauer came out of. There's a ton of kids. You look at the Michigan and Ohio State rivalry and look at all those guys that come from the Midwest, tons of kids. Notre Dame has always done well in keeping a lot of those athletes home. Yeah. Anywhere you go, in the country. And the only reason why I always kind of say about Florida is that we have more. It doesn't mean ours are all better, but we have, if you look at any of these states, Michigan, Indiana, they have 100 kids, but we go 300-400 deep. And that's the only difference. But that's not to take anything away from, any of the Midwest schools, or even, I had an opportunity, probably one of the most exciting games I've ever been to as far as crowd and talent was in Tulsa, where I saw Tulsa Union play against Jenks, two really big programs out of that area. Got an opportunity to see California back in the day when Servite was really good, and Bishop Amat. Now it's Mater Dei and St. John Bosco. But yeah, George, I take nothing away from any other part of the country. You look at the Bosa brothers, John Bosa, their father came out of Keene, New Hampshire, and played at Boston College when Doug Flutie was there, when Troy Stratford was there. So you could go anywhere around you want, and you'll find great talent.
And another question, too, that's been really of concern to mine, Larry. It used to be that we kept sacred, for lack of a better term, Friday nights. Friday nights, of course, under the lights, these high school kids, the band, the cheerleaders, the whole homecoming. I mean, it's just an event. I mean, my daughter plays in the marching band here at a school called Warren Cousino, and we're damn proud of her in her first year in high school. And it's so much fun, as you know, on Friday nights. But yet we see that college football encroaching on Friday nights. The Fox has to have a game of the week now on Friday nights. We see the NFL making inroads and playing on Christmas Day, and they got a Friday night Black Friday game and all that. And I'm sorry, Larry, I don't like it. I really think that that's a mistake. And I'm just curious about your thoughts on Friday nights, especially when it comes to football.
Yeah, you couldn't be any more correct. I mean, back in my day, we didn't have all this stuff, back in the 60s, 70s. The only thing now that overrides it is money. And, people are spending a lot of money to have those games. And it's weird because last Friday night, I'm sitting at the high school game and have my phone on watching UNLV in Kansas because I didn't want to miss it. Obviously, I've gone to school there, and, we've had probably the worst football program in the country over the last 35 years since Randall Cunningham and Ickey Woods were there. So, but I couldn't agree with you more. But you remember this, like the movies, like All the Right Moves with Tom Cruise it was Ampipe, but I think it was kind of Aliquippa. But those Pittsburgh Friday nights, those games in the suburbs of Pittsburgh. And as you mentioned, Chicago, has, I think they did a poll like 5 years ago that Chicago has deemed 40 inner city schools.
Wow.
Football, only 9 made it to the second round, and basketball, 27 made it to the second round. And basketball, especially in Chicago area, JB, I mean, it's huge. I mean, a lot of the Westinghouses and all those
Definitely.
big time schools, where Dwayne Wade and all these guys that came out of that area. So, I can't agree with you more. We in South Florida, because of the fact that a lot of programs in Miami-Dade County don't have stadiums. So what's happening now is you're having Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday games. Good for me to see that, but it takes kind of that, you could have like Miami Central and Miami Northwestern, they'll be playing in 2 weeks, which is like a bitter rival. And they'll get 12,000 fans. But a mile and a half down the road at another stadium, they could have 200. And you see, that's, to me, in the Midwest, there's more of that loyalty. There's more of that, like you said, George, there's more of that Friday night feel to it. The band, the pregame tailgates, the, post-game waiting for, the players to come out and stuff. We don't have that here. I could probably say, you're probably lucky that your daughter's in the band, because it's, when Scott will tell you, when Florida A&M didn't bring their band down here,
Right.
everybody was really upset, because, everybody wants to see, a halftime show like that, especially somebody that has a, reputation like Florida A&M bands. But, I couldn't agree with you more. But we're never going to see it come back, because that almighty dollar. And, now you have Mac Tuesday and Wednesday nights, and, and then Thursday evening NFL, which never, Monday night used to be, because when I was growing up, they started Monday Night Football with, with Howard Cosell and Don Meredith and back in the day. And that was great, because we, even though we had school the next day, I remember about 8:30, my dad sending us for ice cream. We went and got ice cream and sat there and watched the NFL Monday night game. And, that was good. But then they started adding, like you said, Thanksgiving was always great with Detroit. Was Dallas kind of did it. But now, as you said, there's 2-3 games, and then there's a college game, Mississippi State. The Egg Bowl is usually played. Yeah, it's kind of gotten away from that. The only Friday games there used to be, I used to remember Nebraska and Oklahoma used to play on Friday, the day after.
Very good. All right, we'll turn it over to Candy.
So, Larry, I have a couple of questions. One of my first questions is,
the food in the press box is horrible. No, I just
well, and they ran out this last time with the 2.5
I know
hours.
they did, especially during a delay.
I know. But my question is there are some colleges that obviously have iconic stadiums. And then there are some teams that play in NFL stadiums, like the Canes play where the Dolphins play. Right now, USF plays where Tampa Bay plays.
Right, Jay,
Is it an advantage or a disadvantage to be playing?
Well, when it comes to recruiting, obviously, as George said before, that Midwest feel when you're at Michigan, the big house, or you're at Ohio State, you could walk through the campus and there's that feel, they like in Penn State, they have that walk that, that they do. And a lot of those other programs have the same thing, and Ole Miss and, Gainesville, as you guys were up there, you're like minutes from campus and you could walk over and you could tailgate. But on the other hand, if you play at an NFL stadium and you take a kid and say, oh, by the way, Tua played here. The Dolphins played here, and all that. So, and we have major bowl games here, the Orange Bowl. That's kind of a selling point as well. And as well as I do, that if you go to a Dolphin game at Hard Rock Stadium, you see all the Ring of Honor and all that stuff, but they transform it when Miami plays there, where they have their own Ring of Honor. So,
Right.
yeah, and because of property values, you'll never get Miami, especially in Coral Gables, will never be able to afford a stadium. I mean, it's just too costly, and the average person doesn't understand. But Miami's small; they only have 12,000 undergraduates, and it's a small, people. And same thing with USC. Same thing. They're two of the same type of schools in big cities that play in NFL stadiums. Although USC plays in the Coliseum where nobody plays anymore but them. But yeah, there's advantages, Candy, and there's disadvantages. I think the college atmosphere is great, but Miami, let's be honest, Miami wouldn't draw no matter what. They're just not, they've never drawn. And, I think that the one thing that UNLV's done, playing in Allegiant Stadium, the brand new Allegiant Stadium, is what they've done is they sell no upper deck or middle deck seats. They're all lower bowl. And that means when you see it on TV, it looks like they got a pretty decent crowd. Now, Miami should do the same thing, but they're stubborn and people don't want to do that. And, it always looked like they have no crowd at all. And especially the other day, it's almost embarrassing. And people are right. They don't support the football team. You have a core of people that do it. So Miami, it really wouldn't matter if Miami had an on-campus stadium or not. They were kind of proposing Tropical Park, which is like 4 miles from there, but that's never going to go anywhere. So they'll stay there. They signed a 30-something year lease. And, but yeah, there's, you look at there's some programs that have to play, off campus because of the fact that, because the real estate values are so expensive, like in LA and Miami, that it just doesn't pay to put an on-campus stadium. And a lot of these, programs, like you look at, like Georgia Tech, they kind of they were in the middle of town before Atlanta started getting big. Same thing with and UCLA too plays at the Rose Bowl. It's not on campus. You'll see that in quite a few areas. Houston was playing at the Astrodome for a long time. Then they built like a 35,000 on-seat campus that USF's going to do the same thing. I'm of the belief that, if it really doesn't matter for Miami if they're playing at Hard Rock, because they're going to get that type of crowd no matter if they're there or at home. But for the tradition and these kids to walk, just party out and not have to drive. And that's why what Miami's done is they have these buses that take them from campus. So, if they're drinking or whatever, they don't have to drive, and they're like party buses. And, a lot of kids take advantage of it. So, yeah. To answer your question, in a lot of areas that already have it, for them to move off campus would be kind of a culture shock. But for those like Miami and USC and programs like that who've never had on-campus facilities, they're pretty much accustomed to what's going on.
Well, remember one thing though, Larry and I have seen the Hurricanes play not only at Hard Rock Stadium, but we saw them play at the Orange Bowl too. So, which is, I think, a little bit closer to campus, but it was inevitable that they had to move up to Hard Rock because you had the amenities and all that stuff. So,
yeah. Well,
so
Miami's
seen them play at both stadiums.
Miami doesn't want to play on that Orange Bowl site now. They lost their last game there 49-0 to Virginia, and then when they went and played at Marlins Park, they lost to FIU. So I think they're staying far enough away from that.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Go ahead, Candy.
So your first love is baseball. And you talk about recruiting and watching recruiters and recruiting. You have seen, or we have seen, a lot more younger pitchers with Tommy John and those kind of injuries. What do you think is the reason? I mean, I know what I think it is, but I'd be curious to hear what your take is on all these Tommy John with the young.
Well, here's the thing too, Candy. Back in the day, you went to Rookie League. Then you went to low A, you went to high A, you went to double A, and then triple A. But now, as you look at guys with experience like Paul Skeens, I mean, here's somebody that starts out because he was at a high level at LSU, which is Southeastern Conference and a good program. He basically started out in high A, went to right to double A. He was in Bradenton. I went to watch him pitch in Bradenton for the Pirates. Then he went to double A. And it's funny because I was doing a interview for him, for the Sporting News, the audio version of the Sporting News, and I called him up on a Friday, and I asked him, hey, would Sunday be good? And then he calls me back Saturday and told me he got called up to Harrisburg, double A. And the next day I asked him if I could, call him. And he goes, well, I got shelled in my first game. Let's wait a while. So they're moving you up faster. And I think that kind of creates, especially for the younger kids. I mean, you look at some of these guys that are 20 years old and playing in the big leagues, and because they have live arms, they throw 97, 98. Back in the day, if you went to 88, 89, 90, you were like a monster. But now you got guys like Aroldis Chapman who throws in the middle 104s, 105s. You got big arms like that. But also, Candy, here's the thing too. The complete games of these days are just far and few between. Back in the day with the Bob Gibsons and the Nolan Ryans, and I mean, they were like workhorses, and they would have like 12, 14 complete games a year. Now you're lucky if you have 12 or 14 complete games in a league, so that's changed a little bit. They're trying to curb it. But what's going to happen is going to happen. If you're, I don't know. I just think it's in the makeup, because you have guys that could throw really, really hard, like the Randy Johnsons and people like that, who never really had drastic arm problems. But then you have other guys who's had that Tommy John surgery and have, been out for, a year and a half or so. And, but I don't think there's a definitive answer to why that's happening. Because they're trying to lessen it now with the innings that they pitch. A lot of these guys are on pitch counts. And certainly you look at, like Strasburg, when they limited him that year to pitching, I think, they cut him off and they say, oh, no more. And they're coming up on a playoffs, and you figure, how can you sit a guy, because they may never get there again, Washington, which is kind of prophetic because they haven't. But, you take a look at a lot of these, these young kids, and, I've been down to Jupiter, and I've watched, the Marlins. I've gone to a lot of these Gulf Coast League games. Like I said, when I go to, football camps in Tampa or Orlando and areas like that during the day, at night, I go over and watch minor league baseball and, see a lot of these kids, like Jose Fernandez type of players, and, the kids that you look and see who when they sign. And they usually ship them off to a rookie league first, just to get them acclimated, and and then they have a start or two, and then because remember, the money that they're putting into these guys today, is just nuts. And it's signing bonuses of $9, $10, $12 million when it used to be 2 and 3 back in the day. And but a lot of things have changed. Money, as I said, George, money is taken over in all the sports, and especially because of the fact that, you're paying these guys crazy, crazy contracts these days. So the money has to come from somewhere. And if people aren't, paying for TV revenues, and that's where a lot of the money comes from. I mean, you look, especially during like the COVID times, it was really tough to sell a lot of this advertising. So, in all sports, it's getting out of hand.
For sure.
Anybody else have any more questions?
No, it's great getting that perspective, Scott. Larry, you're loaded with knowledge, and it really shows. Great insight you're providing us tonight.
All right, Larry, I have a few questions, Larry, to wrap this bad boy up. Number one, the Florida Panthers won the Stanley Cup. Number one, obviously, we know it's great for the area, but can they continue to sustain this type of support long haul, or is it going to be like a typical South Florida, either you win or we don't support? And how long can they keep this momentum going?
Now, in the Stanley Cup Finals 2 years in a row, Scott. So, they lost 4 starters from last year, but they gained 3 new guys. That's one thing in all sports. It's not just hockey. You're never going to keep at there's no loyalty anymore. If somebody's paying you a few more dollars, you're going to jump ship, and you see that all the time. But I think the nucleus that they have now, especially with their coaching staff, has done a great job. And I think the fans really got a taste of it the last couple of years because, you look at the Tampa Bay, and I think the South Florida was always compared to Tampa Bay, and the fact that Tampa Bay was winning, Stanley Cups, and Florida was just, finishing last and not making the playoffs. So when Vinny Viola took over, he vowed to spend money. And he vowed to bring in the best. And I'll tell you what, when when you fulfill those promises, much like Mariocristobal did when he came in and said, hey, listen, in 2-3 years, you're going to see this roster change. And it has. And, and there's really good really good hockey teams. You saw the Edmonton Oilers in the finals last year. They were really good, by all rights, probably had a deeper roster than Florida did. But you look at the Rangers and you look at Boston, and, these hockey teams are all wanting to get into that, and they're all adding the pieces. So it's not going to be easy. And if you remember that Tommy Lasorda came up with that one saying, as heavy as the head that wears the crown. And he's 100% right, because to stay right there, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, Tommy Lasorda is the first major interview I had. You know how close him and I were. Here's a question that I think a lot of people would like to know about. Miami Marlins play at Lone Depot Park, former site of the Orange Bowl. We know it has a history on the site. However, let's not kid ourselves, Larry. We both know that prior to that, they played at Joe Robbie Stadium. Do you think the Marlins could have done better with their site, and they should have played on the Hard Rock site, and that would help their attendance situation? Because right now, unfortunately, I don't know how they stay in business, but I know they were trying to build around the international crowd. I get that, but let's not kid yourself. When you take away your drawing base from the 3 major counties in the area, I think the Marlins hindered themselves by going where they are versus where they should have gone.
Well, first of all, the Dolphins didn't want them there anymore, because then they had to configure the field. They had to play on the grass, like the Jets used to, play at Shea Stadium back in the day. They had to play on that dirt infield, so they really didn't want it. But here's the 2 things about the Marlins. Their ownership is horrible. It always has been. Obviously when Wayne Huizinga started out, but it was a short time thing. They've never had solid management. The only time that people don't understand, they've never won the division. They've won 2 World Series being a wild card. Their drawing power is average at best. They do no promotions. They do nothing. They do no winning. You let a guy like Arraez go in the first 2 months of the season, and then you start cleaning house, and that just signals that you're not going to be a very good team. And outside of Berger, I don't think they got a kid right now that really is any good for major leagues. They got a lot of minor league kids on the team. But that being said, is Major League Baseball wants the Marlins there. They want it because they're the closest they're a gateway to the Caribbean. They're going to host a lot of things. They got Baseball Classic coming this year where they're going to be able to host the finals. So I think Major League Baseball, it kind of, and I wish they'd take over the team and appoint their own GMs and stuff, because the people who own and run the team now have no clue. And the last GM that they had was worth a salt was Larry Beinfest, and they kind of pushed him out. And obviously your guy that went to Detroit right out of here,
Dave Dombrowski.
He had an idea when he first got here, and then when Wayne Huizinga sold the team, it went downhill. But that's the one thing about the Marlins. I don't think they'll ever leave. I think that between you and I think what they should do is play at least 3-4 series a year in Puerto Rico. It would help out financially for them. It would kind of, because a lot of people don't care if Houston comes down here on a Tuesday and Wednesday. A lot of people don't care if Seattle's down here on a Thursday and Friday. So you move those games to Puerto Rico, and you get some revenue. You got a lot of hungry baseball fans down there as well.
Okay, fair enough. 2 quick questions. You give me your prediction for the World Series matchup.
Wow. Being an NL East fan and watching the Phillies, I think the Phillies, if they can get a couple of good arms in there, I think they'll be in there. And it's kind of tough with the American League. I know JB's a Yankee guy, and I would like to say that the Yankees could be there, but I just don't think that they have the arms to win a series. They may win a game or two. They're just, and especially in the second half of the season, they've been just too inconsistent. You get a guy like Garrett Coles who kind of like punked out a couple of times on his starts. And Houston, to me, has a pretty deep rotation. And I'm not leaving Milwaukee out of the mix either, Candy, because, they obviously they did clinch and they got some good arms, but I think Philadelphia's just got the bats. I mean, when you look at I'm going to say something nice about my boy Bryson Stott, a UNLV guy who has really lifted his game up this year as well. I think Philadelphia, and you can pick 2-3 teams in the American League. I don't think there's a definitive team. The Dodgers obviously are always going to be in the mix. They got the big bats. They got some arms. I'll be honest, guys. I don't think there's in the past, and maybe you say, well, the Dodgers are there for sure, but I don't think this year you could say that definitively. As far as
I will say one thing. There was an irony though when the Miami Marlins defeated the New York Yankees in the World Series, and you and I know it because we were here, that you had the Miami Marlins against the Fort Lauderdale Yankees in the Florida State League. So
there you go.
That brings you back. And finally, okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. Miami and USF. What's your prediction?
Miami 43-12.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to go Miami 37-24.
Wow, they're scoring 24 points on a defense.
Yeah, well, I don't know enough about USF. I mean, I can't beat up my alma mater too.
No, I understand. Good quarterback, and a good running back who's from down here in South Florida, Naquan Wright.
I got to go 37-24.
All right. I'm not going to say anything.
But either way, we're still picking Miami. I mean, it is what it is.
That's true. So you may be right.
I mean, hey, listen, I have a loyalty to the Canes. This is my 5th year covering the Canes. I covered them twice when I was with the Digest, and now this is my 3rd year here. And the Canes are what I consider my adopted team. I do stuff with Florida Atlantic, but still, the Canes are they were the first major college football team I covered via the Digest.
No doubt. George, who do you cover? I mean, who do you like, George? I mean, who do you follow college-wise?
Well, college, of course, I follow Michigan and Michigan State and Notre Dame.
Okay.
Being raised a Catholic, I always have my allegiance to Notre Dame. Terrible upset they suffered, and Michigan too.
Like
look,
that, though.
I
They
know.
pick them for the Final Four, and they lose to Marshall, and then they lose to Northern Illinois. And
Exactly. So, and we're not even Division 2 or 3. I even forget in football. Wayne State University, which is in Detroit.
I know.
But, as far as the Super Bowl goes and all that, of course, people here are just going crazy for the Lions.
Sure. And rightfully so. Rightfully so.
That wasn't a good game, though. They lost to Tampa the other day.
All right, leave it alone, George. That's right. I don't want to go past JB Ellis's bedtime, but he's hanging in there he's like a trooper like he always is in all these shows.
That's right.
JB Ellis, he's my brother from another mother. He's actually in that book, too. He made his way in there. So did Icorn. You got in there. I got to just get you one signed when I get back down to the Rock. So, but meanwhile, what a great show we have. Yeah, I'd like to go a different, but 37-24 in Tampa. That's the only reason why I may give it 13 points. So, Larry, we're so glad that you joined us here on the Sports.
I appreciate you guys.
But before you go, okay, we have one little ritual. Everybody, want to let everybody know how they can get a hold of you, Larry.
Okay, my handle on Twitter or X is at prepredzonefl. It's on my screen there. I put it there. Larry Bluestein on Facebook, or Bluestein Recruiting. Our Boy Blue on Instagram. And that's it. I mean, you could get me anywhere. Just Google me, and if you ever need me for anything, talk about any of the recruits around the country or, football, baseball, anything. I'm open. I'm always trying to look to help kids. So if you have any kids around around the country that you think are getting overlooked, get them to me. I'll get them, I'll watch your film, I'll evaluate them, and I'll get them out.
Yeah. Like I say, it's always, and JB, let me tell you, one of the reasons why this show is important to me, that I have not only I've known forever, but Larry Bluestein is a guy who I tell you, I have so much respect that we worked together for so long. And anytime I got a guy like you who's relatively new to the business, and then you see an old pro like Larry, this to me, Larry's a brother, he's a friend, and he's an unbelievable colleague. And the history that we have when I was younger to where I'm at now, I just can't think of a better guy to have on here in front of a national audience. So, Larry, again, I'm obviously looking forward to seeing you back at the Rock. I'll be heading up to Tampa shortly. But thank you very much for joining us, Larry. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it, George, JB.
Great having you.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure meeting you, Larry.
And we'll talk soon.
You bet. I'll see you soon, Larry. God bless, buddy. Thank you.
Yeah, brother.
All right, so now there are four of us. Some questions around with all you guys. What are your thoughts about Larry Bluestein? JB,
Seems like a great guy.
Yeah, he's covered a lot of ground. He's done an awful lot. Candy?
He has such vast experiences in a plethora of different sports. It's not like it's all in one. I guess I really didn't realize. I've known him, but I've only known him on the football side. I really haven't known him on the baseball, hockey, and all those, the different, that he covered the strikers, the soccer league. I know he has been down here in South Florida for a long time. I just didn't realize all the different sports, I guess, that he has covered. And I honestly didn't know that baseball was his first love. So I learned some things tonight too. It was cool.
What about you, George?
Oh, yeah. Excellent. Very knowledgeable. Like you said, Candy, covers so many different sports. And of course, I love guys that start out when these kids are coming out and playing for high school teams. And that whole part of him is just amazing too. We don't get enough high school coverage like we should for these boys and girls.
Okay, well said. Like I say, he's a lifelong friend, brother, and everything. And Larry's a guy that means so much to me. There are a lot of people that mean so much to me, and they're listed in my book. So, with that said, Candy, take it home.
The South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book last December called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by your host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth, and the foreword was written by George Eichhorn. Talks about Scott's 40-plus years in the business and how the business has changed over that time. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Apple, and Google Books. You can also find a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where all three of the gentlemen on the panel right now do write for us, and I take pictures, and they're up there. Any place you get your podcast, you can listen to us. Monday nights is Fire Up Florida for hockey. Then we talk baseball. Tuesday nights is Inside the Pigskin we're talking all kinds of football. Wednesday nights, Sports Exchange. You're listening to it right now. And Thursday nights is Fire Up, which you never know what kind of topic we're going to be talking about. If you want to advertise or sponsor a show, call Scott, 954-304-4941. If you missed any of it, either hit the rewind button or you can replay. And then what we also ask is that we have people that are on our panel here tonight. Please go out and support them as well. And we appreciate everybody that's contributed in the chat room. JB, how can people find you?
JB_ the program on X, sidelinesportsnet.com. Great website designed by Candy. Sideline Sports every Tuesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern.
Awesome. George, how can everybody get a hold of you?
Well, you can follow me on the Motor City Tribune, which is under the South Florida Tribune website. At the end of that column that I write, there's a link to my book, which is Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air. And it's a great compilation of sportscasting in Detroit and Michigan, including Scott and many others. And you can reach me on Twitter at X at SandGSports99. And also reach me on LinkedIn under my name and on Yahoo at gicorn@yahoo.com.
And I'm just going to quick update. The Brewers were playing the Phillies tonight. The Brewers actually won. They had won the division, which is back-to-back. The last time they won back-to-back division champs was back in 1981 and 82. For those of you who know what happened in 82, there is a movie that just came out about the 1982 Brewers. So hopefully they can do good in the postseason, but they're playing tough teams. I mean, and to beat Philly was, as most people, and you heard Larry say that he thinks Philly is one of the best. And Philly, Brewers are the first team to clinch, so the Phillies haven't even clinched. So everybody's playing meaningful baseball right now, which is cool.
Well, that's I might as well update the Detroit Tigers score. I have the Tigers beating the Kansas City Royals 4-2. And I'll tell you what, I have predicted the Phillies to win it all. I really did. I don't know if the Yankees will keep up their end of the bargain, make it. But, hey, let's face the reality. The Yankees are playing much, much better this year. And I just hope that people get off of Aaron Boone's back. So, any closing thoughts, JB Ellis?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so meanwhile, that concludes this edition of the Sports Exchange. On behalf of JB Ellis, Candy Ebling, George Eichhorn, my name is Scott Morgan, Roth Motor City Mattermouth. Thank you for joining this edition of the Sports Exchange, and a special shout out to Larry Bluestein for being on the show with us. So we'll catch you next Wednesday night. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.